Hello and welcome to the 12 Months Marathon Podcast with me, John Hill, the running podcast for the over 35s with Marathon Dreams. Episode 60, your end of year running plan. So what's going on with me at the moment? Well, I'm very excited to say that on Sunday I'm doing the Great North Run here in the UK. It's the largest half marathon in the world. As I've been told, number of participants, I believe there are 60,000 people who've entered. It's on TV as well, so it's very popular. So I'm lucky to be doing that. I'm also raising money for Birmingham's Children's Hospital, which is a very famous children's hospital close to where I am here. I will put the link in the description for my fundraising page, so if anybody does want to sponsor me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much. What I wanted to talk about today was, when I say end of year running plan, I guess this is for everybody, but mainly those of you who've got a spring marathon lined up. Because at the moment, I'm having a lot of conversations with people who have got spring marathons lined up. Because, let's be honest, for most people in holiday season, which is August, for a lot of people around the world, August is like a shutdown month. I was away for 2 weeks. You know, kids are off. It's a challenging time for a lot of people. Even if you haven't got kids, it can be a challenging time because of just people being away and stuff and things not feeling right in terms of routine. Now, being in the fitness industry and the fitness game for as long as I have been, that can have a knock-on effect to your health and well-being, because what can happen is people can get sidetracked away from their health and fitness, and let's include running in that, and then it's very hard to get sort of back on the horse, as it were, towards the end of the year. Which, from a running standpoint, is a problem for two reasons. Firstly, because it's just general consistency. If you're just running and you just run regularly, and it's easy to get inside your own head and, you know, think, oh, I'll start next year and things like that. And, you know, I've seen that in the fitness game. People say, well, I'll start in January now, and January becomes never. The other problem for a lot of runners is people who've got spring marathons lined up. Okay, so if you have a spring marathon lined up, then it's a very risky time, because let's say you're doing an April marathon. Now, the big marathons here in the UK, Manchester, London, Brighton, are in April, right? So for a lot of people, their training schedules start around January, end of December. Okay. Now, the problem that a lot of people, also it's a problem, it's more of a trap that people fall into, is the delayed life plan, which is, I'll start training when it's time to start training, because, you know, winter, Christmas, it's getting colder, it's a bit wet and stuff like that, and the weather's against us. Now, I'm aware that people listen to this podcast from all over the world, so most of my listeners are in sort of the UK and the US, but it's kind of a problem across the board with all marathons. You know, we kind of leave things till the last minute. We kind of think, oh, well, I'll just wait till I'm 16 weeks out, and then I'll start my 16-week training program. And for me, that's going to cause you problems, because first and foremost, you don't allow any leeway to build up a base or to allow for mistakes in the 16 weeks. Because if anything goes wrong in the 16 weeks and you've not built up a base beforehand, then you're going to fall backwards in the 16 weeks, not only physically, but also mentally as well. And it's the mental side of it, actually, that's quite important, because it's marathon training, if you haven't done it, is incredibly hard. It's very rewarding, and running a marathon is brilliant, but the training itself is the real challenge. Now, somebody said to me a few years ago that the race itself is a victory lap, and I love that concept, because I do believe that. Because I remember when I was a little less experienced in my marathon training, doing some runs towards the end of training, particularly winter training, was a little bit, to use a phrase, it was a bit, I've got to go out again. And if you go back and listen to previous podcasts, I recorded one called The Resentful Runner, which is a bit of a warning to everybody that I do believe if you follow a marathon training plan correctly, at some point during the cycle, you will dislike running a little bit, or even hate it a little bit, just because of the volume that you've got to do. And that's an effective training plan. And that doesn't mean that you can't adjust training plans and move them around and make them suit your needs. It just means that to successfully run a marathon, in my experience, is a 16-week training plan, and there is volume in there in terms of mileage, unless you are a conditioned athlete. But normally, I'm not really talking to conditioned athletes on this podcast. I'm talking to people who are either looking at maybe first marathon, or they're looking to maybe PB a subsequent one. So we're talking to you people. So if you haven't listened to this podcast before, it is worth just reiterating that message around be prepared for a lot of volume of training. I've had a conversation with a couple of people recently who are doing their first marathon in the spring. Now, of course, logistically, another problem is if you're getting into a big marathon, like say a London Marathon or one of the majors, well, you find out quite early that you're getting into that marathon. So that's great, but also it can be a bit of a hindrance because you've got to plan everything quite early, but then you sort of sat there in limbo. So if you found, I think London found out a couple of months ago, if you find out in July, then you've got until, it's not that far, let's be honest, of a year, 9 months before you are going out to run. So a lot of people don't know what to do in that middle bit, in that interim. And I think the problem is, and I'm going to speak primarily going into the autumn or fall in the US winter season here, the autumn-winter season, is that it can be quite easy to get inside your own head and do what most people do at this time of year, which is a lot of people start to think about shutting up shop for the winter. People can't comprehend exercising in the winter. Now, running, let's be honest, for most of us is a primarily outdoors activity. Now, if depending on where you are in the world, and there might be adverse conditions that mean occasionally you have to go inside at a treadmill, but most people who train for marathons, particularly marathons, and half marathons to a certain degree, because there is some volume there, will do so outside. So the thought of going out in the winter for a lot of people is very daunting. Now, if you are a new runner or newish runner or first-time marathon runner, then the thought of doing all this volume in terms of miles is big, but also then the thought of doing all this volume in miles and also doing it in adverse weather conditions probably doesn't fill your heart with joy. The problem that you've got is that's the reality of the situation, because I've spoken to many people over the years who've told me, well, I don't like running in rain, and my first response to that is that's the least of your worries on marathon day, because you've got to build up a level of resilience. And this isn't about no pain, no gain and running through walls and screaming motivational slogans. This is purely about the facts of the matter. And to build a marathon runner, in my experience, in my opinion, there are certain things you need to do and there's certain principles you need to understand. And one of those principles is I've got to be ready for most situations, including bad weather, including those things, because I've ran marathons in the shivering cold. I've also ran marathons in the heat. I think probably one of the hottest London marathons was the one I did in 2014, and then I did Paris the following year, which was hot. It wasn't as hot, it was a bit more humid, but it was still a very, very warm run. So you've got to build up that resilience, and you've got to be very conscious of saying, well, hang on a minute, if my training for, say, I'm just going to use London Marathon as an example here, my training for London will probably start around the 5th of January, that's a 16 week, that you're 16 weeks out, there's a long time there, and if we adopt the same principle that a lot of people adopt in the summer, in December, they're going to shut up shop, well, you're going to lose 2 or 3 weeks. Now, of course, a couple of days, even a week and things like that are okay, but if you start losing 2 to 3 weeks, even a month of training or any sort of running prior to then heading into a marathon training cycle, it could knock you back. And before we go there, let's just quick disclaimer, I'm not talking about injuries here, I'm talking a conscious choice. I am talking it's winter, it's autumn, I can't possibly run in these conditions. You've got to break out of that. Now, if you're an accomplished runner who runs all year round and is experienced, I'm probably telling this probably suck egg stuff to you, but to the newer runner who I'm speaking to a lot of at the moment who are doing their first marathon in the spring, you need to be ready for that. And building a solid base between now and the end of the year is essential, in my opinion. That doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking. It certainly doesn't have to mimic the marathon training cycle, because there is definitely a lot of volume in a marathon training cycle and you don't want that, but you do want to make sure that you're starting to get used to putting miles on your legs. And if you build up the discipline to start running now or to increase your running now at this time of year, again, if you are in a country where we're going into winter, I'm conscious of where people are listening, but if we are going into the winter season or an adverse season per se, which could be heat, let's be honest, you're going to build up that resilience. And I think you prepare yourself for anything. And for me, marathon running is, like I said, not only the physical aspects of it, but also the mental aspects of it of, right, I need to prepare myself here. I need to be fully prepared. Not scared, not any of this, because again, I have been criticised by people and dug out online, people saying you're making it sound like it's really harsh. I'm not. I'm making it sound like what it actually is, which is a wonderful experience, particularly if you're doing a big one, particularly if you are doing a major or London. I've heard some fantastic stories about Sydney, and I'm not jealous at all, honest. But especially if you're doing a big marathon, for me, and if it's your first one, you want it to be special. And for a lot of people, and I've had this conversation with a few people, it could be their only one, especially if it's a bigger one. I'm doing the Great North Run on Sunday, incredibly difficult run to get into. Who knows when I might ever be able to do that run again? Yeah, so I'm very privileged and honoured to be able to do that. And I got in with the charity, so, it shows how difficult it is I didn't get in with the ballot. So yeah, you want that experience to be as good as it possibly can be on that day. So to do that, you need to prepare yourself right. So if you are in a country, particularly the UK, where a lot of people listen to this, if we are heading into that autumn winter season and you are having a bit of a wobble, then you need to sit down and say, right, what's my outcome here? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to achieve? If you've got a big marathon coming up in the spring that's entered and locked in, then you need to be saying, okay, what's my plan for the next 3 months? Because you need a plan for the next 3 months if you're going to be successful on that day. You could sort of, wing it and blag it, as we say, and, don't do anything for the next 3 months and then hope your 16 weeks goes well. But like James Cameron, the famous director, said, hope is not a strategy. You need to be really clear on your plan for the next 3 months, and sort of even getting some help from someone or whatever, or some sort of plan, or following any plan online or an app will help you. I'm a big advocate of saying, and I had this conversation the other day with somebody, look, follow a plan until the end of the year, maybe a half marathon plan or even a 10k plan or something, just to get you used to following a plan. And this is especially important if you are a first-time marathoner, because you want to get into that mindset of, here's how to follow a plan. And whether that plan's a 10k plan, between now and when you start your marathon training, doesn't really matter that much, because ultimately you're just getting used to following a plan. And for a lot of people, particularly when they are a new marathon runner, one of the habits they need to build, or the mindset they need to build, is this mindset of, I need to understand how to follow a plan, which is a lot of the work that I do with coaching with people. Is, yes, it's about an effective plan, but it's also about the mindset of how to follow a plan, how to adapt a plan, how to understand a plan, and how to make a plan fit you. Really, marathon training plans are fairly similar, I believe, in my experience. It's just a pacing thing that's important. Most of it is around, okay, how do you fit this around your lifestyle, especially if you're over 35, especially if you've got family and you've got responsibilities and you can't just drop everything and go out and run, which a lot of us can't, including myself. You need to have that flexibility and understanding about how to follow a plan. So the moral of the story here is, if you have got particularly, I'm talking to the people with the spring marathon, and particularly, adding on that to that, the people who are doing their first one in the spring, make sure you've got a plan for the next 3 months, some kind of objective for the next 3 months to keep you sharp. And that includes December, because what you don't want to do is completely shut up shop in December and then try and start cold on the 5th of Jan if you are training for a sort of mid to end April marathon, because that's going to be a struggle, and that potentially has got risks attached to it. And also, it's a big psychological thing. You don't want to feel like you're falling backwards, because what you might do is then start pushing your marathon training back. And if we start pushing it back and missing weeks or shortening it, you can get away with that. But if it's your first one, my advice is always make sure you've got the proper plan and you follow it thoroughly, so you're really comfortable. And a lot of the people that I've worked with and the work that I've done with people, particularly on their first ones, you can tell that level of there's almost that level of confidence underneath the fear. The fear is normal because they've never done it before. So if you've never done something before, of course you're going to be scared of it. Like I've always said, you're not scared of the dark, you're scared of what could be in it. Do you know what I mean? So they're not scared of the marathon, they're just scared of not knowing what that feels like. But with the volume of training and the right training, you can at least feel confident that you should be able to get round, unless something really out in the ordinary happens to you. You should be okay. So to conclude on this one, nice and simple, if you have got aspirations for any sort of plan in the spring or the new year, you've got to make sure that you're on it now. If you're doing a marathon over the next couple of weeks, there are some big marathons left. Berlin is in a couple of weeks, and obviously New York as well, and Chicago. So there's still big marathons to come up this year. So if you're doing one of those, of course, you're probably going to be knee deep in a plan and doing a plan. But particularly you guys doing it in the spring, who I'm speaking to a lot now, now's the time to get yourself in a place where you've got a full understanding of what's going to go on between now and the end of the year. The guys who are doing marathons between now and the end of the year, all of the marathons I've just mentioned, you should be well within your plan and you should be on it from that point of view. So you spring guys really need to have a think about what's your plan between now and the end of the year, or if you've not necessarily got a goal in the spring and you want to maintain your running, how are you going to negotiate the autumn stroke fall winter season, if it's going to be that way for the rest of this year. So that's episode 60 for you. Hopefully that's been useful, particularly for you first time spring marathons got it coming up. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of reassurance. As always, if you want to have a chat with me or you want to follow me, I appreciate that. If you don't already, over on Instagram at 12 months to marathon. Don't forget my free running community for runners over 35, which can help you with support and accountability. You can click the link in my bio and join that. It's absolutely free, and we share some stuff in there, and people do interact in that group, which keeps us away from social media. If you're new to the podcast, please feel free to subscribe and follow it. I do appreciate that wherever you get your podcast from, either on here, Spotify or Apple. And then what I'd like you to do is make sure you give me a star rating and a review, because that really helps as well, alongside sharing the podcast. So thank you very much for listening, as always. If there's any of you listen to this before Sunday, maybe I'll see you there, because there's quite a few people. Hopefully, if you do, give me a wave. And if you are doing the Great North Run, go well, enjoy it, and I'll hopefully see you there. Thanks for listening, everybody, as always, and I'll look forward to speaking to you all very soon indeed.